What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is Kevin with Optimized Essentials, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking to you about how the cheapest dopamine is the most expensive, okay? And how the most expensive dopamine is actually the most highest quality and the one we should actually be trying to get, okay? Now, what do I mean by this? If you've been in the personal development space or the self-help space, you've probably heard of the term dopamine detox, or you understand that activities like porn, drugs, video games, right? Drinking alcohol, smoking pot, any pleasurable activity that you do that spikes your dopamine instantaneously or by a large amount, right? We all know that there's downsides to it. But what I'm trying to paint a picture in your head is that the cheapest dopamine, cheap pleasures are the most expensive ones to engage in. Let's break this down. What do I mean? A hot topic I've been on for a while, right, is semen retention and nofap and sexual transmutation. For the average guy who watches porn, busts his nut, right, ejaculates, what does he do? He engages in an activity like watching porn and ejaculating. And what does that do? That spikes his dopamine like tremendously, right? It's a cheap form of pleasure. It's a cheap way to get dopamine. What happens when you spike your dopamine or when you get cheap dopamine? Well, you have to pay for it down the line. Meaning when you spike your dopamine that much, well, when it comes down, right, what goes up must come down. It's going to crash and it's going to go even lower, supposedly. And next time, you're going to need to do it again, or you're going to do more amounts of it in order to get the same high, if you get the same high. And then when you crash, you're going to crash even lower, below that. So there was like a chart that goes up and down, and each time it goes down, it gets lower and lower. So you're lowering your baseline. I'm sure we all are aware of that topic or aware of that information. But when I say it's the most expensive, you also have to understand your body has to repair itself, or it has to regenerate, because you don't just produce semen for free. So the cheapest form of dopamine is the most expensive because semen is your body's most expensive resource. And then if we don't just talk about nofap and semen retention, we talk about drinking alcohol, smoking pot, doing drugs. Well, what does that do? When you're opting for cheap dopamine, meaning that, oh yeah, getting high, well, what does that do? That plagues your lungs, right? That puts smoke in your lungs. So a lot of guys who say, well, yeah, no one's died from lung cancer from smoking, but they're over here like, you can hear them wheezing. You can hear the phlegm in their lungs, right? That icky goo, that's, that sticky shit that's on weed. Well, that tar is within your lungs too. So these guys who are opting for the bud or they're drinking alcohol, right? What does that do? That spikes your dopamine, but then you pay for it down the line because now your body has to reprocess it. That's why a lot of guys feel tired, slow, sluggish after they drink alcohol, or they feel slow and derpy and stupid and unmotivated, right? For the longest time, right, when I did pot, when I was hooked on pot, I would often argue for it. A lot of guys defend pot because, oh, there's no downsides to it, but then their eyes are all like fucked up. You can see guys, they look like potheads. Like they smoke obviously a fuck ton of pot when their eyes and their face, and you can tell like, oh, this guy obviously smokes pot. Like he looks like a pothead, right? His eyes are starting to get all wonky, and it's like, dude, you're a pothead. So when you spike your dopamine by drinking, maybe doing heroin or doing whatever drug that it is, what does it do? It lifts up your vibration. It gets you high, right? But at the expense of what? When you come back down from the low, will you experience that same level of highness, but in the opposite form? So this is just the laws of the universe. It's the yin and the yang. There's a seed, right? There's a white dot within the black, and then there's a black dot within the white. And I want to extrapolate this to what Napoleon Hill has talked about, right? Every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries within the seed of an equal or greater benefit. Or he's always talks about every failure brings with it the seed of an equivalent success. Well, this is the yin and the yang. At the darkest of nights, there's going to be the seed of light, right? The sun coming out. And when it's sun time, well, there's still going to be the seed of nighttime. You cannot have success without failure. You cannot have failure without success. Meaning you cannot have pleasure without pain, or pain without pleasure. There's always going to be a seed of pain within pleasure, and there's going to be a seed of pleasure within pain. And I want you to think about this in your own life. If you've gone through the dark night of the soul, you understand that at the deepest, darkest moments of your life, that gave the possibility, the seed of having a better life. Meaning down the road, down the line, when you reflect back on your instance, when you reflect back on the times when you're the most depressed, when you reflect back on the darkest, deepest, darkest times of your life, when you hit rock bottom, if you came out of it, that made you a better man. Because of my trauma, because of what I've gone through in life, because of my failures, that brought with it the seed of the equivalent success, right? So when you understand this is just simply the law of the universe, that you cannot have one without the other, or that there's a seed of one within the seed of the other, you can understand this point right here that I share with most guys. Short-term pleasure always leads to long-term pain. If you opt for short-term pleasure, i.e. smoking pot, drinking alcohol, playing video games, anything that gives you pleasure up front, i.e. short-term pleasure, will always lead to long-term pain. Meaning once the high is over, once the high is ended, you will experience the pain down the line. It's just law. It's like by law, you cannot escape this. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look up the 7 Hermetic principles. These are the 7 laws that govern the universe, right? The law of mentalism, the law of vibration, the law of polarity, the law of dualism, right? Study this stuff. You will see it play out over and over and over again. So when you understand this point, short-term pleasure leads to long-term pain, and you flip it around and you make your motto, short-term pain to get long-term pleasure, that is when your life will begin to change, okay? A lot of life, the principles of life, a lot of success things is just understanding it's the flip side of the situation. You know when they say, when you plan to fail, you failed to plan? Well, that's just like flipping. That's like wordplay, right? When you don't have a dream, when you're not working for a dream, then you're working for someone else's dream. Sometimes it's just a small flip, right? Or winners don't quit and quitters don't win. Or when you don't sacrifice for what you want becomes a sacrifice. A lot of this is just wordplay. It's just flipping the things, right? So when you understand that, if you want true pleasure, you want true lasting fulfillment, success in life, you understand the motto, short-term pain equals long-term pleasure. Most guys, the average man opts for short-term pleasure. They want the pleasure up front, and they're willing to get pain down the line. What I'm teaching here, what I advocate for most men, is to get on NoFap, get on semen retention, to discipline yourself, go work out, go to the gym, and subject yourself to short-term pain, right? Working out hurts for some people, right? When they're lifting the barbell and they're like, oh, this burns. It's painful. Disciplining yourself is painful. Taking a cold shower is painful in the short term, right? Sitting in a hot sauna for 30 minutes is painful. Maybe eating healthy food that you don't want to eat is painful. Disciplining yourself is painful. But what happens down the line? When you engage in short-term pain and you can sit through it like a man and you can exercise your willpower, men were designed for challenges. If you can put yourself and subject yourself through pain, I promise you, down the line, by law, I guarantee it, you will experience long-term pleasure. So when you can download this way of living, this consciousness that I'm trying to embed into you, when you can see this perspective, when you have this level of awareness and you understand that short-term pleasure always leads to long-term pain, and you flip it around and you live by short-term pain, or you opt for short-term pain such as discipline, you will inevitably experience long-term pleasure. And that's why doing semen retention, as I talk about so much in my videos, is so powerful, because you are constantly subjecting yourself to short-term pain, supposedly. If you're transmuting your sexual energy, actually, it's not painful at all, because you know that sexual desire that you have has been converted into successful desires. Instead of wanting to seek out sex and bust your nut, you are now constantly thinking about, how can I get ahead in life? How can I achieve my success? How can I make more money? How can I find more clients? How can I become a better man? That same desire, that same that you have for sex becomes that drive, ambition, and focus you have for something better, whether it be spiritual growth, physical growth, improving as a man, increasing your masculinity, right? Becoming a 1% man, a high value man. That same desire that you have for sex can be converted into this avenue, which is why I push my program so much. Sexual manifestation. That is the essence of why I named it sexual manifestation. It's becoming a sexual man, and it's also manifesting with your sexual energy, because there's an abundance of life force energy within your body that is unique to you only. Okay. Now, guys, that's all I wanted to share in this video. Short, sweet. Just remember, short-term pleasure always leads to long-term pain. And if you opt for the short-term pain, you will eventually experience long-term pleasure, okay? And if you want a course that teaches you about sexual transmutation, check out the links down below. You can get free access to sexual manifestation, the first part. Watch the 2-hour-long sexual transmutation masterclass. Get coaching, apply for coaching if you want to work with me, if you want to learn how to master your sexual urges. Join a Facebook group. And yes, that is all. Type in the comments, short-term pleasure equals long-term pain, and long-term pain equals short-term pleasure if you made it to the end of the video. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Peace.